Let's move on to the managers of the Livelihood Empowerment Against Poverty program, who are calling for more donor support to make the program more impactful. Over 332,000 households have been enrolled onto the program. The least monthly allowance each member of these households gets is 32 Ghana cedis. For the beneficiaries, the stipend is woefully inadequate and requires a review. But according to managers of the program, an upward review is only possible if the program secures additional funding support. Let's delve a little bit more on this program as far as fighting poverty and ensuring social inclusion are concerned. Mr. Colson Ankabesiam is the head of communications at the LEAP program, and he's joining me via Skype with more. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Awesome. Okay, so before we delve into the numbers, when was the last time that the allowance was reviewed upwards?
It was reviewed in 2015 to this current rate. Since the program began in 2008, it has been reviewed 3 times. In 2008, the rates were 16, that is 13 cedis per month, as you mentioned. Then 2012, it was also reviewed. Then the recent review was done in 2015, where you have the 32 for one person of the eligible members, 38, 44, 53 by month. But we have seen that with the recent impact evaluation that was conducted in 2016 and published in 2017, the international best practice indicates that 20% of the cash should constitute, 20% should be of the household consumption. But as of 2012, it was 18%. 2017, it reduced to 16%. That means that the value of the grant has eroded over time. And this is affecting the impact of the program and the basis for which we think that we still need continuous government and donor support to ensure that we review the grant to reflect inflationary trends, cost of living, and other indicators of livelihood.
So some of our listeners who may not be familiar with this program, just before we continue, do you want to just quickly tell us what the objective of this program is, to put the conversation in context?
Yeah. The goal first is to smoothen consumption among extremely poor households by giving them additional money, and then human capital development. Specifically, we seek to improve household nutrition and consumption. 2, to increase access to health care. And that is to the extent that we have a relationship with National Health Insurance Authority where they are registered for free. 3rd is to increase basic school enrollment, attendance, and retention in school of orphan and vulnerable children who are on the program in these households. Then the last one, we know that the grant is not enough. We need to also increase access to complementary services or social services within our country so that they are linked to them to ensure that they improve the outcomes that we seek to achieve as a program. So basically, and it's a program that targets extremely poor and vulnerable households in this country. And the categories that benefit are orphan and vulnerable children, persons aged 65 and above without support, severely disabled persons without productive capacity. They can't work at all. And then the last category is extremely poor, pregnant, or mothers with children under 1 year who cannot support themselves. And these are found in communities.
Right. I mean, so listing the categories of people that you're aiming at helping out. Now, yes, if you give them an average of 32 Ghana cedis per month.
That's the minimum.
Okay.
The households that are on the program don't take the same amount. Mm-hmm. They take the amount based on how many of these people I've mentioned. If, for instance, orphan plus aged, that is 2 persons, they would take 38 by month, and they would pay bi-monthly. So you multiply that by 2. And if it's only an orphan, then they get this 32. If you have orphan, mother, aged, and more than that, or 2 orphans more, 3 of them would take 44 by month. more than 4 or equal to 4 will take 53 by month. So we have 4 categories of payment tiers.
Okay. Okay, so let's
So the minimum by month, maximum 53 by month.
Okay, so let's take the group that takes the most amount of money, which is 53
Yes.
cedis per month, but times 2, which is 106 Ghana cedis every 2 months. How much of an impact is 106 Ghana cedis able to make on a household or a family? I'm thinking, if I had 106 Ghana cedis, I can't imagine living through a month with it. So I'm wondering how people will live through it for 2 impact.
Yes,
is this money making?
We have done the program. If you do an urban and middle class analysis, you would think that this is not useful. But if you do a rural and a poverty outlook of it, it is making a greater impact.
Okay.
One, and besides these observations, we have also done academic researches, baseline, midline, and endline. And these reports attest to the fact that it is making some impact. For instance, we have the report suggests that the end line suggests that 12% increase in school enrollment has been reported in these households. It has also improved out-of-the-pocket expenditure on health because beneficiaries are automatically enrolled onto the health insurance scheme. And then in terms of food security, 60% increase has been reported. And then in terms of inputs for agriculture, this money that we are seeing has helped some households by 62% to purchase fertilizer for their farms. And then, in terms of petty trading and other things, the report suggests that 63 of these people are able to put their money into petty trading. And the other one is even financial inclusion. All beneficiaries have e-switch cards. And by that, they are assigned to banks for which they go. And there's also promoted financial literacy. None of these people, if not for LEAP, would have access to any bank at all. They are now becoming financial literate. They save. Some of them are able to now contact banks to see how much credit they can access. And that aside, CDD has also done another assessment on the program where they tie it to citizenship engagement. Some of them are now beginning to see that, yes, there is a state that is responding to them. And they feel that Ghana exists, and they are feeling that they are within a state that adheres to their citizenship, and so largely. And the other one we also do is that we also go as a program on the field. What the medical people call verbal autopsy, what they tell you from their own experiences, also suggests that they're receiving what we call happiness index. Some of them will indicate they are now happy. They are now reintegrating into society. They can attend church. They can contribute to funerals. They can contribute to naming ceremonies, and families are now even inviting them for meetings. And we think that it is, though not too insignificant, but it is contributing enormously to improving the livelihoods of these beneficiaries who would have otherwise been struggling to death without support.
Well, that sounds very hopeful. But before you go, in terms of numbers, how many beneficiaries do we have under the 332,000 households that are covered nationwide?
Yes. If you translate that, that gives us about 1.4 million individuals benefiting from the program. But that still falls short of the Ghana Statistical Service indicators of extreme poverty in Ghana. By Ghana Statistical Service, 8.2 million Ghanaians are extremely poor, and which we are expected to have covered. And that translates, this 8.2 is about 2.4 million, and we are still within what? 1.4.
Okay.
So that is why the basis for one of the reasons, besides increasing the grant to make it more impactful, we need to also expand to cover these beneficiaries, these extremely poor people who are also out there without our support. And the thing is this, social protection and cash transfer, for that matter, is not only to help the poor, but it's also help the entire society. One, there are also suggestions that it boosts there is a multiplier effect in terms of local economy, because people have money to buy and sell. The other one is also that our own collective security, we need to support each other and let people feel they have a stake or they benefit from the system. So we must think broadly like that to ensure that, I keep telling people, if you don't help the poor has no logic. Poverty has no logic. They will find their way to survive. And survival is a human instinct. So We may build the walls as high as possible, arm the police and the others. If you don't make sure that everybody feels part of the state called Ghana by giving them some social support to lead them. And like our president said, it is a handout. It's not a handout. It's a hand up, not a handout. This is just a way to at least stabilize them so that this grant will only give them some stability so that these extremely poor and vulnerable people will find their way back to society where they can find livelihood or ways, or diversify their ways of what? Living. And all of us would be better, and Ghana will be more integrated and collective so that we can achieve other development. Because if you don't help them, they would always be drawing back the gains that we are making. So as a people, we must commit greater resources. But we are excited that 2019, government allocated 168 million to the program. 2020, we have gotten an increase to 200 million. That is, we are grateful, but we still think that we need to do more in terms of increasing the grant and expanding the program to reach out to all extremely poor and vulnerable households in this country.
Speaking of being able to extend this grant, in terms of sustainability, what is the status of funding?
Status of funding, from 2008, there is political commitment, which I think Ghanaians have accepted it. The other one is that we need to also find ways of also improving the productive capacity of this beneficiary through literacy training, sensitization, behavioral change. Because poverty sometimes becomes a culture. You may not think that you have the potential to get your way out. But as we regularly meet them through the beneficiary fora and other media, we sensitize them to ensure that don't just consume everything, find a way of, at least part of it, investing it in something that is productive so that you can improve your outcomes. And intermittently, we'll be assessing them to see, are you worse off, better off, or well off? Then based on that, we'll find a way of what also graduating those that are better off and bringing in those that are not need to be put on the program.
Okay. Right. Well, thank you very much for joining us this morning. Mr. Nkabesiam is the head of communications at the LEAP program.